Imagine, a college-age student, someone bursting with potential and ambition who finds themselves entangled in an abusive relationship. The partner, charming at first, gradually isolates the student, taking them on a seemingly adventurous cross-country trip. Over time, the trip turns into a tool for control, stripping the student of their support system and leaving them dependent on the abuser. The abuse escalates, and the unthinkable happens. The abuser takes their partner's life. The abuser's parents, faced with the horrifying reality of their child's actions, are driven by a powerful and primal instinct to protect. It's a natural reaction, of course, one rooted in the desire to shield their child from harm, even if that means covering up a crime. This is what many believe happened in the case of Brian Laundrie and the death of Gabby Petito. Now let's go back into this situation and imagine you are the parent I described, Brian Laundrie's mother to be exact, and you offer your son a shovel and garbage bags, thinking he might need to dispose of a body. This is according to a letter returned from the FBI to Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito's parents as part of the evidence involving the deaths of their children. Those who saw the letter says it contains references to a shovel, burying a body, and helping get Brian out of prison for the death of his then-girlfriend, Gabby Petito. Brian would never get out of prison, though, because he would never go to prison. He fled his home after police became aware of his crime. Eventually, Brian's remains were found in Florida's Carlton Reserve in October 2021. His cause of death was later revealed to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The Laundries, Christopher and Roberta, have claimed that the letter has nothing to do with Gabby Petito, as it's not dated. Brian's mother claimed it was just a quirky letter she wrote to help repair her relationship with her son. She claimed she gave the letter to Brian before Brian and Gabby even left Florida for New York, which was on June 2nd, 2021. Gabby Petito's parents would file a civil lawsuit against Laundrie's parents in 2023 following the death of Gabby, accusing them of intentional infliction of emotional distress, and the letter in question is a key piece of evidence pointing to their involvement. Petito's parents claim the Laundries found out Brian had murdered Gabby and did nothing other than release a statement through their attorney, Steve Bertolino, who was added as a co-defendant in the lawsuit. While Brian is now deceased and can't be held accountable for his evil actions, Brian's parents still can. Many believe, that includes law enforcement and the public alike, that Brian's parents are indeed liable for causing distress and harm after the fact, as well as implicated in aiding Brian in fleeing prosecution and evading justice for the atrocious crimes he committed. In my discussion of the Brian Laundrie case, I'll examine how his parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, raised him and their potential role in helping him evade law enforcement. I'll analyze their involvement, particularly Roberta's unsettling letter, and whether their actions suggest complicity in an attempt to avoid justice. Lastly, I'll look at the civil case between Gabby's parents and Brian's and discuss whether any criminal charges could still be brought against them. Brian Laundrie is no longer alive to face consequences for his crime, but the question remains, should his parents be held accountable for their potential role in helping him flee and hide his crime? Let's get started. Brian Laundrie was born on November 18, 1997 in Northport, Florida to parents Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, and he had a sister named Cassie. Growing up, Brian was known to be a craftsman who lived a survivalist lifestyle, often sharing his designs and drawings on his Instagram account. Brian told friends and co-workers that he was skilled in outdoor survival, allegedly boasting to a colleague once that he had lived in a forest for weeks on just snacks. He would also reportedly tell a friend of Gabby's that he spent 3 months hiking alone in the Appalachians. However, his sister claimed he was only a mediocre survivalist. Kids who claimed to know him later described his life as lonely. After entering high school, Brian decided to change. He adjusted his hairstyle and made a few friends who shared his interest in guns and comics. He got into yoga around this time and lost the 40 pounds that had made him overweight. Before deciding to travel extensively, Brian worked at a local juice bar called the Juiceria Smoothie Bar in Northport. He often screened printed t-shirts with faces of popular animated characters like Bart Simpson and Hellboy Still, though his primary job before the trip was at the Juiceria. Gabby and Brian met in high school in Blue Point, New York. They both attended Bayport Blue Point High School on Long Island, though they didn't start dating until later. After graduating in 2016, Brian allegedly couch surfed in Long Island. His parents had sold their home and taken off to Florida, leaving Brian, who wanted to stay in Bayport, to live off generous former classmates. A year or so post-high school, Gabby and Brian reconnected and began a relationship. And in 2019, Gabby moved in with Brian and his parents in Northport, Florida. The two later would get engaged in July 2022, but reportedly decided to call it off, but still remained together as a couple. Gabby's friends have talked about how controlling Brian was, taking her phone and not wanting her to hang out with friends alone. Still, Gabby and Brian decided to set out on a cross-country road trip in July 2021, traveling in a converted Ford Transit van. The couple documented their journey through social media posts and YouTube videos, portraying a seemingly happy and adventurous relationship. However, as the trip progressed, tension between them became apparent. One of the most critical points during their trip would occur on August 12, 2021, when police officers in Moab, Utah, responded to a domestic disturbance call involving Brian and Gabby. A concerned witness had called 911, reporting that he saw Brian hitting Gabby. However, when police arrived, they identified Gabby as the primary aggressor. Body camera footage from the Moab Police Department showed an emotional Gabby in distress, crying as she spoke with officers. She admitted to striking Brian first, but explained that she was reacting to his attempts to keep her away from the van. Brian, on the other hand, appeared calm and cooperative. Officers observed scratches on his face and determined that Gabby was the aggressor, even though Brian had reportedly been seen hitting her first. Instead of arresting her, which is required in many domestic violence situations, the police separated them for the night, sending Brian to a motel and leaving Gabby with the van. Friends of both had said the couple's relationship had very high highs and very low lows. A friend of Gabby's would later describe Brian as controlling, manipulative, and jealous. Many experts and domestic violence advocates have since criticized this police response, arguing that the officers failed to recognize clear signs of coercive control and emotional abuse. They noted that Gabby's extreme emotional state, Brian's calm demeanor, and the earlier 911 call should have raised red flags. Had officers recognized Gabby as the likely victim rather than the aggressor, the case might have been handled very differently. There is no nice way to put it but to say the Moab officers were extremely incompetent and likely misogynistic, choosing to side with an arrogant male abuser who they likely relate to, rather than the distressed and supposedly hysterical woman who was having an episode. Just weeks after the Moab incident, Gabby would be found dead of blunt force trauma injuries to the head and neck and manual strangulation in Wyoming's Grand Teton National Park in September 2021. It was later discovered that Gabby was strangled and killed by Brian. We know this to be the truth because investigators found a notebook near Brian's remains where he admitted to the murder in his own handwriting. Brian's parents were at the reserve with the FBI when the notebook and a backpack were found, and it is understood that they helped the FBI locate the items. His parents say he headed to the Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park, which connects the reserve, for a hike on 13 September. though they originally gave the date of his disappearance as a day later, but then subsequently revised their statement. His parents say Brian departed carrying only a backpack and drove to the reserve in a silver Mustang. After he left the Laundrie home, a full-scale search was initiated for Brian, and local law enforcement would spend $200,000 per day searching for him. Following a tip from reality television celebrity Dog the Bounty Hunter, Brian's parents would confirm that they went camping with their son between 6 and 8 September at the Fort DeSoto Park in Florida's Pinellas County, days before Gabby was reported missing by her mother, Nicole Schmidt. A couple who was camping next to the Laundries may have even captured a photo of Christopher Laundrie walking by in the image's background. Gabby wasn't a stranger at all to Brian's parents in any sense of the word. Gabby had even lived with them for more than a year, as Gabby's mother remembers emphasizing in an open letter to the Laundries when her daughter was still missing. Roberta Laundrie was even a Pinterest collaborator on a Life School Pinterest board created by Gabby that showed pictures of newlyweds with backpacks and posts of baby clothes. With Brian dead, Gabby's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Brian Laundrie's estate, seeking damages for the loss of their daughter. In November 2022, Florida judge awarded them $3 million in this lawsuit. While the Laundrie estate did not possess significant assets, the awarded amount was symbolic, aiming to acknowledge the loss suffered by Gabby's family. Patrick Riley, the attorney representing Gabby's parents, noted that all the funds received would be directed to the Gabby Petito Foundation. Earlier in 2022, Riley and Bertolini had met with the FBI in Tampa to receive belongings gathered over the course of the investigation. The evidence reviewed by both attorneys before being returned to the respective families included Roberta's letter to Brian, which was given to Bertolino. Riley says the letter was found in an envelope labeled "Burn After Reading," but was found intact. He says the letter and envelope were found in the backpack collected by the FBI near Brian Laundrie's remains in the Carlton Reserve. Although the letter was in the FBI's possession for months, the Petito and Laundrie investigation ended in January 2022 without any charges being filed against Christopher or Roberta Laundrie. Based on the contents of the letter and other evidence implicating the Laundries in assisting Brian flee and lie to police, Gabby's parents pursued legal action against Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, alleging intentional infliction of emotional distress. The civil lawsuit contended that the Laundries were aware of Gabby's murder while authorities and her family searched for her, and that they withheld this critical information.
You couldn't call our attorney and give your phone number.
I don't have your attorney, and an attorney's not going to answer at 10, 11 o'clock at night.
I'm not speaking to anybody.
Yeah, we're not comfortable
without
talking
an
to anybody.
attorney. So that's that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the van is only registered to her. Okay?
Well,
Yeah,
I'm not really sure.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm telling you. The
Okay.
title on the state of Florida is it's only hers.
Okay.
So it's not supposed to be here.
Okay,
So I'm going to take a tow truck and get it. Is a car in the way?
that's my car. I can move it.
I mean, so you don't have any issue with us taking the van?
If that's what you're saying, you got to do. You got to do.
Yeah,
But right now, I'm not speaking to you anymore.
Yeah, without our attorney. But
Okay.
I can move the car for you.
You don't find that odd that you guys
Good
really?
night. Good night.
Okay.
Don't knock on my door anymore.
Okay. Are you going to move the car?
I'll move it.
Okay.
So let me break down exactly what the Laundries did to make Gabby's family say this. First, the Laundries never notified Gabby's family or the authorities, even though they knew Brian had returned without her. Then between September 6th and 8th, the Laundries, including Brian, took a family camping trip to Fort DeSoto Park. What a weird time to take a family trip, right? Many believe Christopher and Roberta used this as an opportunity to help Brian escape or at least prepare for his disappearance. The Laundries also ignored calls and messages from Gabby's parents, who were desperately trying to reach their daughter after Brian returned without her. Instead, the Laundries hired a lawyer, Bertolino, and did not speak to the police until Gabby was reported missing on September 11th. Then it took Brian's parents almost a week to report him missing after he left the home on September 13th, just 2 days after Gabby's missing persons report was filed. Then, after weeks of unsuccessful searching for Brian all across Florida and half the United States, Brian's parents finally decided they would try to help locate their son and joined the authorities to search for him on October 20th, 2021. Lo and behold, they quickly found Brian's remains, that notebook, and his backpack. Thus, the legal battle between Gabby's parents and Brian's would be rather protracted, with both sides presenting arguments regarding the extent of the Laundries' knowledge and their responsibilities. During the trial, the Laundries would testify about a frantic phone call from Brian after Gabby's death, in which he repeatedly told them Gabby's gone and requested legal assistance. Despite this call and their concerns for Gabby's well-being, they still didn't inform authorities about what was happening. So in February 2024, after a mediation conference, both families reached a settlement, thereby avoiding a trial. The specific terms of this settlement remain confidential. Still, there are so many unanswered questions and odd behavior by Brian that has never been explained. For one, Brian moved all of his belongings from his parents' home into a storage unit in Florida a week before he left with Gabby on their trip, but never specified why. Why did he move all of his earthly belongings out of his parents' home if he was just going to come back to the same place? Second, how did Brian know that his parents would protect him and not turn him in? I have never, and do not assume, that my mother would not turn me in and then help me escape if I murdered an innocent person. Would I want her to be on my side? Probably, but I still don't know. Why didn't Brian's parents turn him in? Or better yet, why would any parent not turn their kid in for that matter? Psychologists would say, in some cases, denial plays a role. In any instance where a child confesses to their parents about their participation in a horrible crime, the parents might refuse to believe that their child is capable of such violence. They convince themselves that the abuse wasn't severe or that their child couldn't have possibly committed murder. This denial can lead them to rationalize their involvement in hiding evidence, telling themselves that they're simply helping their child through a difficult time. It's unknown if Brian ever outright confessed to his parents or simply asked them to retain a lawyer, thinking he might inevitably be accused of Gabby's appearance. Either way, they still helped him. Fear might be another driving force in what parents might do when confronted with a child who's done something heinous like Brian. The parents might fear losing their child to the legal system or their own social rejection. The thought of their child being taken away either through imprisonment or ostracization can be unbearable, and this fear can push them to take extreme measures to protect their child, even if it means committing a crime like obstructing justice. Just think that baby boy you once held in your arms is now going to prison for the rest of his life. This, I guess, could be unbearable to some. I get it. Shame and concern for reputation can also play a role. Brian's parents might have feared the social stigma that comes with having a murderer for a child. To protect their family's name and maintain their own social standing, they might go to great lengths to hide the truth about what their kid did, Brian in this instance. It's also possible that Brian is just manipulative. He manipulated the Moab police, as willfully incompetent as they were, and he might have manipulated his parents in the same way. And while these theories might explain the Laundrie's behavior, I'm still at the point of saying that they committed a number of crimes. They committed a number of acts that meet the elements for a number of crimes. Many states recognize parental immunity in minor offenses, but not when there are violent crimes involved. That protection would not apply in this case, for instance. One of the most serious crimes that Brian's parents could face, and should face in my opinion, is accessory after the fact. They helped him after the crime was committed, after he murdered Gabby. They helped him falsify his whereabouts. They may have even helped him buy camping materials so that he could flee to the Everglades. And then there's obstruction of justice, which is that broad charge. It can apply to something as simple as misleading cops or destroying evidence. Did the Laundries hide evidence during their oddly timed camping trip? And while Brian's parents say they didn't help, we can all see that they chose to stay silent. They didn't want to answer phone calls, and they didn't report that Brian had left, even though they knew he was or would be under investigation for the murder of Gabby. So the question of whether Brian Laundrie's parents, Christopher and Roberta, should face criminal charges continues. It's debated. And as of February 2025, they haven't faced any charges. But I and many others believe that they should. They should be held accountable for their actions following Gabby Petito's murder. And this is what today's story is about. They need to be held accountable for helping their son cover up the heinous and evil crime that he committed. This concludes today's story. For more true crime and celebrity stories, please check out the Black Rhetoric homepage here on YouTube. Until next time.